Good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's good afternoon. I realise it's different times of the day for you. And I would like to welcome you to this live session, which is looking at biomechanics and race profiling. We have three excellent panelists for you today, and I'm going to introduce them to you. So, but first, just to say, my name is Rosie McLaughlin. I'm the chair of the Competitive Commission, and it is the Competitive Commission who have organised the sessions on this coaching conference. The first person I'm going to introduce to you is Valery Kleshnev. Valery is a former Russian and Olympic rower. He won a silver medal in the 1980 Olympic Games in the men's quadruple scull for Russia. And he qualified as from Physical Education College, and he has a PhD in rowing biomechanics from St. Petersburg Sports Institute in Russia, which he completed in 1991. He's well known to all of us in high performance rowing, as he is very prolific in his output. And from 1998, he worked with the top rowers at the Australian Institute of Sport. And then in 2005, he moved to the UK and worked at the English Institute of Sport, also again with the top rowers from United Kingdom. And in 2009, he set up his own company, BioRow. But even before that, he'd been putting out a regular newsletter to keep us up to date with things that were going on in biomechanics and to answer questions from the participants in the sport. And he has recently published a book on biomechanics of rowing, a unique insight into the technical and tactical aspects of elite rowing. And that is an updated, reprinted version, which was put out in September 2020. So as you can see, he's got an excellent pedigree behind him in terms of talking about the biomechanics of rowing. And he's a great friend to World Rowing and has participated in many activities of World Rowing around the globe. Paul Thompson was also a rower and an under-23 silver medalist. Before he went into coaching. He's also a qualified physical education teacher, and he has a great pedigree as a coach. So earlier in the week, we had something about serial winning coaches, and Paul would most definitely come into that category. So in 1996, he coached the first Australian women to a gold medal at the Atlanta Games. And then he came over to the UK in the early 2000s and became the head coach for the women's and lightweight program. In 2012, as the head coach, he led the GB team to 3 golds and 2 silver medals in an outstanding performance for the women and lightweights at the Olympic Games. And from 2020 or 2019, perhaps even a bit earlier, Paul, sorry about the slight vagueness here. He's moved to China as one of the lead coaches there on the women's program. And we can already start to see the results of the Chinese women. They've always had some good results, but they had across the board good results last year. Our final speaker is Gianni Postiglione, who is the coaching director for World Rowing. And he will be known to many of you because of he has many videos on World Rowing site talking about coaching, observations of coaching. And if you haven't seen any of them, you should go to look at them. Gianni has a very unique take on life and looks at it almost as an artist, I would say. And so he has he brings a different dimension to how we look at the sport. He's been very successful, and he was in Italy as a coach under Tor Nielsen when they had a very successful period, and then since then has moved and is currently working with the Greek team, and he's also had success with there. So wherever Gianni has been, he has had success. But he also was a very successful rower, And I think I'm right in saying, Gianni, you also were an athlete at the 1980 Olympic Games. Is that right?
No, I was in selection for the 1980,
Okay.
but I was too old at that time.
You were too old. Okay.
Yeah. But
Sorry
73,
about that.
73.
Yeah, but he has been very successful as a rower as well. So I think we have an excellent group of 3 panelists who are at the very top, either of their biomechanics and working with top athletes, or of using biomechanics and being top level coaches. So I'm sure we're going to have a really good presentation and discussion. So thank you very much, all 3 of you.
Thanks, Rosie, for a very nice introduction. And I'll start and share my screen. I hope you can see my screen now, right? And the title is Rowing Biomechanics and Race Analysis. Content, trends of rowing speed, very brief note on vocabulary, prognostic or gold standard times, racing stroke rate, speed and effective work per stroke, and some conclusions and proposals. Basically, I'm doing this analysis of race times and speed nearly 20 years now, and published some articles after Sydney Olympics in 2001, and then every year I publish some analysis in my newsletter after Worlds and final regatta of the year. And in 2005, it was World Rowing Forum in Istanbul. I presented some, long-term trends and identified 5 periods. They're here, beginning from 19th century till 21st century. And yeah, they are here. I wouldn't repeat them. That time I tried to find some valid trends and try to filter the data, because speed is affected by weather conditions. And when I try to filter, and I found that basically it's very unreliable method. You can see how trends are changing when you exclude the slowest speeds, and they all different trends, and it's very unreliable method. And basically it was not possible that time to produce statistically significant prognostic times and some trends. And here are the factors affecting performance in sport. 5 general factors applicable to all sports. Firstly, it's training volume, which depend on the professionalism of the sport, and of course on funding of the sport, how much money is invested in this sport. Then development of training methods, which is related to professionalism, how much time athletes can spend on their training, and this dictates what methods they use. Rowing technique, of course, or any sporting technique, running, swimming, doesn't matter. Equipment development, and of course doping control. Very interesting. It was found that there's some trends going down when the doping control increased, and that some substances became banned from practice. And rowing specific factors, of course, weather conditions. This is random factor and makes us difficult to analyze race results. And crew synchronization, because we are team sport, and selection and training system for crew boats, for big boats, really affect the performance in big boats in our sport. And of course, this related again to funding and professionalism, how much time athletes can spend together rowing in big boats, etc. Effect of weather conditions. The only experimental study was done by Klaus Filter even a long time ago in East Germany, and he published in the year 2000 in his essay. And this is dependence of the rowing speed on the water temperature. You see it decreases when the water getting colder, and on the race and wind effect of the wind. You can see that tailwind increases speed by about 7%, 4 meters per second wind. In small boats, 5% in eighths. That means in small boats affected by wind more than big boats. And headwind has high effect. It's actually decreases speed by about 13% in singles, 9% in eighths, at the same 4 meters per second. Here you can see the charts again. This is all Klaus filter results. We have to rely on that because I think it's pretty expensive study to wind tunnel, and nobody repeated it since that time. And here the rowing speed at top world regattas since 1993, when the current rowing program was established, more or less consistently till now, till the last year. Basically, this year we had no world championship regatta. But anyway, basically the speed is ranked here. You can see the fastest world championship was in 2014 in Amsterdam. If you take it 100%, the slowest one was in 1995 in Tampere, 93%. This is average in 13 consistent Olympic events. So you see that the variation basically is plus minus 3% in the speed, which is 11 to 15 seconds over 2K, depending, of course, on the board type. And this variation, of course, mainly explained by effect of random weather conditions. You see, it's very, really random ranking of the speed. And when I build some linear trends over that rowing speeds, and I found that linear trends going up slightly 0.054% per year. However, statistical significance was very low. Basically, R square is 0.6. That means random factor explains 94% of the speed variation. Only 6% can be reliable variation of the performance. It's interesting that the highest growth was found in women's 8, actually 0.18%, men's 8, and lightweight women's double. And the slowest growth was found in women's quad, women's double, and men's pair. Interesting. And only trends in women's 8 and men's 8 could be considered as statistically significant. Here, the significance of the trends. And recently, actually this year, that was, we are in good communication with Dr. Volker Nolte. You know, it's very famous biomechanist, sort of guru of rowing biomechanics. And he sent me his idea that he thought that last decade, last maybe 15 years, rowing speed decreases. And I said, no, look, the linear trend going up. And I've sent him my data on the race speed. And he made some, he actually split that time period in decades, 90s, after 2000, and the latest decade now. And he found that trends decreasing now. And then I perfected the method a little bit. I basically, I identified decades from 1993, and then scroll down 1 year in, 1 year out, basically 1993, 2003, then 1994, 2004, and so on until 2009, 2019. So the total amount, 14 decades. And in each decade, I calculated the linear trends of rowing speed and determined the slope, basically the growth, positive or negative. And then I put the trend on trends, basically approximated that slopes with nonlinear third order polynomial trend, and I found it statistically quite well determined, 84%. Basically, that means random factor explains only 16% of its variation. And I found that the general trend became negative actually in 2007. It crosses zero, you see here. It's going below zero at 2007. That means this is the middle of corresponding decade 2002 to 2012. And it still remains negative. This may be a little bit small increase last few decades. And then these findings were confirmed with nonlinear trends, with various sorts of filtering. On the top there is no filtering. And then in the middle, red one is filtering plus minus standard deviation. That means outside this range, the roving speeds were rejected, about 30%. And then stronger filtering, plus minus 0.5 standard deviation, 60% rejected. But they're all similar. And they all show us that the top roving speed was achieved somewhere around 2006, 2008. And after that, it's continuously decreased. Similar analysis was made in various events. You see here men's sculling, very similar trends in men's single and double. In men's quad, general trends more variable and remains negative, while in small sculling boards it became more close to zero now. Interesting in women's sculling, women's single, actually the general trend increases last few decades, but in women's double and quad still remain negative. Both lightweights events has very similar trends, actually very similar to general trends. So they were positive before 2007, 2008, and then became negative, slight increasing now. And very interesting in men's sweep events, men's pair, they had the longest period of positive trends, basically till 2015. And I think it could be related to some outstanding pairs, Olympic champions, Tompkins, Dean, Free, and then Kiwi pair, Bernd Murray, both multiple Olympic champions. And then when they retired, you can see that in men's pairs, the trend sharply decreased in the most negative actually now in relative to other events. In other sweep categories, you see in men's 8 improving, became positive, men's 4 remain negative. And in women's sculling, you see that as it was shown before, women's 8 has the most positive general trend. So that means the results improving faster than other boards. Basically only 4 decades negative out of 14, and now significantly improving, also positive. So conclusions on speed trends. Roving speed achieved its peak in 2006-2008, after which average results continuously decreasing. Possible reasons, I can only speculate that it could be either changes in Olympic and World Roving program, maybe not, maybe changes in anti-doping rules and control, stricter control, you know, some substances were banned and methods, and competition from other sports and activities, which could lead to lower funding for roving teams and less popularity. I don't know if it happened or not. And maybe new generation of rovers, less motivation, again, competition with other activities. Training method was changed or equipment changes, I think it's unlikely. I think equipment only getting better, or maybe something else. So I think, I hope we'll discuss it, and would be interested to hear your ideas. Very brief note on roving vocabulary. And, you know, for many years, we are talking always about the board speed, and too much focus placed on the board. You know, we're talking about board check, how can we make the board to go faster, etc. And I think working with, you know, with rovers and coaches, I found this concept makes some negative effect, you know, because when we focus on the board, don't stop the board, it's some negative effect on the rowing technique. So in fact, the rover's mass is the biggest part of the rover board system. So I think it makes sense to shift the focus to the rover, not to the board. Or when we talk about race analysis, to rowing in general. And it makes sense because average speeds of the board, the rover over the stroke cycle are the same, are equal. So the board speed means the same as the rover speed or just rowing speed. And if you compare with other sport, nobody say, like in cycling, bicycle speed or skate speed, or how I can make my running shoe to go faster. A bit of nonsense. So we will only discuss rowing speed now. And if you mentioned, I use rowing speed, not the board speed, unless we are specifically analyzing instantaneous board velocity, which is different from the rover's velocity during the stroke cycle. So board velocity inside stroke cycle makes sense, but board speed, I don't think it really makes sense. And this is my personal opinion. I'm not sure if you agree or not, but I think it makes sense. And now from the trends, the consequence of the trends, I think it would be good to discuss prognostic, or what we call gold standard times. Why do we need prognostic times? Firstly, I think the most obvious reason to define training intensity as a percentage of that prognostic time. Then for evaluation of performance in various board types, which actually, if you have the squad and you and the second point, selection of the rovers, of course, they are related points. You need to select the rovers and send only part of your squad. You need to find out which event, which board is relatively faster and has more chances to win on international regattas. Then setting targets for long and short term rovers development. And it's interesting, it's motivation, basically. That was also very good discussion with Volker Nolte when I put forward my prognostic times during the webinar, and something like 5:23 for men's 8. He said, that's really discouraging for rovers, and because they may say, we already rowing 5:20, and it's not really target for us. I think it makes sense, but still, you know, I try to be more objective. Then modeling of training indicators, of course, power, stroke rate, stroke length, and maybe for something else. And how the prognostic times were obtained. And I tried to search internet, and in the previous slide, you saw some pictures, and here are numbers. And I found that all published national general governing bodies prognostic times are anonymous. There is no effort, not mentioned who derived them, methods of their development were not disclosed. So it's quite likely they're subjective. And some NGBs do not publish them at all. And I think it creates some problems because it's not possible to discuss prognostic times, nobody responsible for their correctness, which may lead to some errors in the crew selection. And usually the prognostic times are set equal or higher than world best times, which is not realistic to achieve without very fast weather conditions. If you see, for example, the best example is women's single 7:07, and prognostic here times here 7:08 for Australia. But if you watch, world regattas, all winners usually show about something like 7:15, 7:20, not even close to that time. So what could be an objective method of prognostic time calculation? I think this is my job, I always try to find some objective method and put some science in the background. And I could identify two different methods. First, using results of the winners of the world regattas. Advantages, relatively simple and obvious, does not require biomechanical measurements. But as we discussed before, this method has very low reliability because of effect of random weather conditions. So trends are not really reliable. And the second method is biomechanical modeling using raw wind power and drag factor in various board types. Advantages to predict speed at various weather conditions and to model it for various rovers power weight ratio. Basically, we using the same equation, we can model it if you know ERG score. We can model it for juniors, for under 23, for for any category. And disadvantages could be very complicated, require additional information from biomechanical measurements, and again weather effect. Both methods require understanding of target weather conditions. Of course, if we're talking about prognostic times, we need to show what would be wind, headwind or no wind or tailwind. And here's my prognostic times for 2024 obtained from the trends. Here you can see prognostic time in blue, then percentage to world best time. Then what type of trend I used, linear or second or third order polynomial, and reliability. R squared, it shows us how reliable the trend. So the prognostic times ranges from 97% from world best time in men's 4 up to 100.3% in women's pair. Average number 98.6% from world best time. And reliability determination factor was the lowest in men's 4 and women's 4, actually, men's quad and women's quad, which is basically the most unreliable trend, the slowest growth of the speed. And the highest in 42% in women's 8, where we have very reliable increasing trend, right? And here, my prognostic times obtained with modeling. Basically, here we speculate some ERG score of the world best rovers and body weight or mass of the rovers. And using some equations, we can derive these prognostic times. And using actually drag factor obtained with our measurements, more than 30,000 measurements actually. Usually it's in tailwind. And when we compare that prognostic times basically with world best time, Australian, Canadian, and you see here by row trend times obtained with trend of the rowing speed, and this modeling, you can see that by row prognostic time slower, and some times are really close. For example, for men's pair 6:11, 6:10.7, very close, and for women's single 7:15, 7:14.8, both with trends and modeling shows very similar times, but some of them quite different. For men's single, it's with trends it's 6:42, with modeling 6:35.8. But anyway, it's just my proposal. I'm not dictating that you should use it. It's just for your information. That's how it works when I try to produce something objectively again, so we can discuss it at least. Now I will talk about the trends of the racing stroke rate. I also doing this analysis since the year 2000, since Sydney Olympics. Originally it was done using video. Basically, we had a system just to click the mouse button for every stroke, and then basically watching video of the recording of the race and analyze the stroke rate in this way. And early after 2000 till 2002, average stroke rate in this is actually 13 consistent Olympic boards. Average stroke rate was about 38. And then it was quite consistent in 2004 till 2016, slightly lower, about 37 stroke per minute, average over the race. And then suddenly in 2017, average stroke rate significantly increased by 2 strokes per minute, up to 39. And but the speed, actually, the blue curve here, was not the highest without significant increase of the speed. Last year in 2019, stroke rate slightly decreased again, down to 38.5. My opinion, it was more or less fashion, you know. I think the key point was world record in men's single. Robbie Manson rode 6:30 in Poznan at very strong tailwind, and using stroke rate about 40 all the way through the race. And I think people just tried to copy that method. Sometimes it was successful attempt, sometimes not. And here, trends of the stroke rate in various events. You can see that in men's sweep category, it increased dramatically and then went down basically at the same level as early in 2000. In sculling, it's blue curve, it's continuously growing. And basically now, last year, average stroke rate in sweep, in men's sweep and sculling events was very similar. It's also quite interesting information. Anyway, then stroke rate in the various place takers. Here, the analysis of the latest worlds in Linz 2019. You see here all finalists. This is actually from GPS analysis. And you see the average of the winners, silver, bronze medalists, and other place takers, and average for all board types. And you can see that more than half of the winners in Olympic events, 8 out of 14, won with lower stroke rate in compared to their competitors. This means they got an advantage because of high effective work per stroke. In some boards, men's double, women's double, men's 4, men's and women's 8. The winners rated up to 2 strokes per minute slower than silver medalists. So they took about 8 to 14 strokes less over 2K. And interesting example, the advantage of the higher stroke rate was quite doubtful. For example, Australian men's 4, they have shown the highest average stroke rate, 42, but took the last 6th place in the final. So that means high effective work per stroke still may have a better potential for speed improvement. That's the point from this analysis. As I said, FISA has made very good effort in providing accurate timing and information service at world regattas. Now GPS data is on rowing speed and stroke rate is available, which is very good. And here's GPS data on stroke rate during the Worlds 2019, last year. And this is average again of 14 Olympic board events. And you see that the winners had the most consistent effective work per stroke. Effective work per stroke actually is derived as a sort of ratio of the speed and the stroke rate using some cubic equation. And very interesting that the winners has relatively lower speed and stroke rate and effective work per start at the start of the race, but higher at the middle. Especially you see that red circle between 500 and 750 meters. And they have distinctively higher speed and higher effective work per stroke, but lower stroke rate. Actually, that means after 500 meters mark, the most of the finalists decreased the speed because they pull less force and or shorter stroke, whatever, less work per stroke. But finally, winners maintained work per stroke and achieved higher speed, and basically that was the difference. And also at the finish, you see high effective work per stroke for the winners here. Common questions on the racing stroke rate. That's what people usually ask me. Why does racing stroke rate differ in the various board types? Why it's different? I think the main reason is the gearing ratio varies much in much narrower range, only 3% than rowing speed. That means big, faster boards use lighter gearing compared to small boards. That means they have to use higher stroke rate. And other way around, small boards cannot increase stroke rate because they're gearing relatively heavier for their board speed. The second question, does high stroke rate always produce higher rowing speed? Not really. We just saw that very often rowing speed decreases at higher stroke rate if effective work per stroke drops down significantly, mainly because of the stroke length is shortening. We know very well that some crews who try to use very high stroke rate, they make the stroke really short, sort of half slide rowing. And it's not really always effective. Sometimes at fast weather conditions, maybe for some crews, but not for everyone. Is there any universally optimal racing stroke rate for all board types? I think it's quite possible that optimal racing stroke rate exists somewhere within the range 36-40 stroke per minute, depending on the board type, of course, and gearing, rigging ratio. And it should be higher, of course, in sweep rowing than in sculling because smaller range of the oar angles and lighter dynamic gearing in sweep rowing because they row shorter angles. That's the most common point. Answers for the most common questions. Now, I would like to, using this opportunity, and because this is FISA conference, I would like to put forward some proposals on improvement of the race analysis. I think it would be quite beneficial for rowing community if rowing performance analysis area would be developed further. First of all, weather conditions, air and water temperature, wind speed and direction should be measured at every stroke race, at every race at World Regattas and included in results report, at least at one point or maybe more. I think it's not really difficult exercise because, weather station now cost maybe 100 euro, 100 pounds or dollars, not really expensive. And for the first instance, that data could be input of the data could be manual. You know, it's simply measure some average wind speed and direction during the race, and then put it in the results protocol. And then finally, after a few years, we have some database and we can analyze the trends of rowing speed better. And I think also this information would improve fairness of the races and allow to take action before the race, not after it. You know, to my knowledge, currently the reshuffling of the lanes are made after commission can see that you know, some results of the race are not really even, and some lanes look like faster than others, but it could be too late, you know, for those athletes and crews who already passed that race. So I'm not really sure if it's really fair. And then weather information allow us to derive sort of absolute race times at some standard conditions, say at no wind, 20 degrees water temperature. And these absolute times would help to see real trends and establish ranking, say 10 or 20 best times of the year, as swimmers do. You know, look at the swimmers or athletics or, you know, some other speed skating, other sports. They do ranking, and every athlete or crew, doesn't matter where they race, it could be in Europe or America or Asia or Australia, and they compare their results basically with other crew all around the world online. I think this could be really good motivation for rowers, and this could increase competitiveness in rowing and basically results. That's what which are decreasing now. We can see, we just saw it. And finally, the race results information could be organized in better way. I think it's very simple measure. If you remember, it was old FISA website, which was discontinued probably somewhere in 2013. And on that site, I was able to download the whole results of the whole regatta in basically in a couple of clicks, and then put them in an Excel spreadsheet and analyze. These days, if you want, you know, race results, you have to scroll the website, go to each race, copy paste. It's really time consuming. So that's why now I analyze basically only finalists and not heats, not semis, and best times not always achieved in finals. You know, it could be in heats. So that means analysis is not so complete. So I think something more user-friendly or more attention to sort of sports science and like race analysis community would really help to, you know, increase motivation. And I received some messages and questions, you know, do I have results? And I always share what I have, but last few years I was not really able to collect that information effectively, and I think it could be improved. So basically that's what be it. Thanks a lot for your attention. I hope I kept my time limit, and I'm really interested to hear your feedback and opinion on information I just presented. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Rosie, I go on my own, or? Okay.
Yeah, Ludovica should put your slides on.
Can you see the screen?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Valerie, for your presentation. It is very clear, as always you are. And as always, you give a lot of stimuli for inputs of what you are telling. Of course, we have also different point of view in some issues. And your, how to say, mathematic point of view is very well appreciated, statistically point of view is well appreciated. But I would like to introduce or to say something about things that you already said about the records. Please, Ludovica, next slide. Okay, about the records. Of course, we totally agree. The lottery, as you, the wind, the weather conditions are like a lottery in the races. You can have bad line or good line, and then you will make your world records. But this is always will happen like this until it will not be wind speed limit or some better control on the wind measurements. So I completely agree with you that we should accept about the control of the wind or control of the measurement of the wind, mostly the direction and the temperature of water. This is the basic point to consider the world records. The second point is about the equipment, about the boats, the oars, the riggers, all this, they can have for sure one influence on the world record. And because of FISA decide to maintain control on the development of technology, of course, for a question of costs, we cannot see so big progression from historical point of view. And then we have another point that is physiological development, better race distribution. This is also another issue that is mostly related to the experience of rowers. So to make very good 2,000 meters, for sure we need athletes. They have the training and the experience to do one race on the top of their possibilities with one pace race, one speed or velocity, as you said before, well distributed on the 2,000 meters. And then we have another point. We have the technical efficiency. Technical efficiency, it needs some years. You cannot have technical efficiency at the beginning of career of rowers. And you know, so for some rowers, the process is quite fast, but some others, they have quite slow progress. And we have seen it, rowers at the beginning of their career, they don't make improvements, but slowly they grow and they get more confidence. And on this point, I want to put a little remark to your note you said before. You said we should focus, we focus too much on the boat and we should focus more on the rower. Of course, I think what you want to say is mostly from a biomechanical point of view. But from my point of view is we should focus on the boat because it's the relationship between athletes and boat that give the possibility of the best performance. The efficiency is not the rower related to himself, but is how the boat is moving inside the boat, how the rower move him and his partners in the boat to make the boat faster. So the technique and the year of rowing are very important to have one record. And then another point to have, how to say, the possibility to make a record is to be in one semi-professional system, to have a future economical security. In reality, we have many things in one record. So I can just make a synthesis inside. So the first is the environment. Second, we need a good equipment. Third, we need a lot of good physiological conditions, technical efficiency in technical qualities, skills, and then we need social, like I said now, for the security economy. Also, we need good social conditions where you are supported. And then there is another point. There are some countries, they have targets, and some others different targets. For example, I mean, mostly big countries, small countries, they have the target they can reach. In Germany, they are always focused on big boat. And for example, New Zealand, I have seen with many years of watching their organization, they are focused on small boats. but not because they want to organize most boats, but it's more efficient to have, for example, with the 5 athletes, men, and 5 athletes, women, 10 rowers totally, you have 3 medals in each group. So in theory, with the 10 rowers, you can have 6 medals in Olympics, of course. But if you put all best athletes you have in 1/8, of course, these good rowers make a very great boat, very enthusiastic boat. It is the team, but in reality, they produce only 1 medal. So this kind of policy of federation, also this has an influence on the record. And then at the end, we should say the rowing is single, so in the individual person, and we have the 8. So the records, if it's a single, is the 8, they have a totally different view, because in the single is 1 rower, and you need the talent, he need to be well trained, and he will prepare himself, and he must be able to row very well in the single. So 1 person that he take out all the skills in this specific boat. But in 1/8, and of course in all other boats from 4 going to the double or pair, in the 8 you need to make a good record, you need 8 rowers, very good physiologically. So the all qualities we said before, you should have multiplied for 8. And this for me gives more variation to the possibility of a record, and also more difficulties to produce the record. So if we have, like I said in the previous point, Germany focused on the 8. So in the whole country, they took the best people and they are in the 8. For sure, they have a higher possibility to make a record, but not in the first year they are together. They need some years, because the 8 need also huge technical efficiency, because technical efficiency will have a big load in this we say evaluation or building the record. Next slide, please, Ludovica. Now, you write one part where you said the factors, they affect the performance, and I am totally agree on all of them. But which are, from that factors, which factors they affect the world record? So the world record, I would like to remind, is the highest, the fastest speed that you can have on 2,000 meters. And I like your reference when you said some athletes, they do it this in the heats. It is possible, because for their qualities, they can make a world record in the first race, they have the best conditions. But if you have not the right skills and you don't have the right training, you cannot repeat it. So the training as a volume, and also after as a method, it can help, but not for the record. The training can help for to express the stable high velocity in all events that we can have in the World Championship or World Cup. For sure, training volume, not in the sense that you increase the training volume, because we know that in many sports, rowing also, we have some time by time, like a fashion, or we say new concept going in, that the volume increase and the results are reducing. And you reduce the volume and the results are increasing. So the volume in training is not one point that can be always positive. So for me, it's not affecting the record. Professionalism, for sure, yes. Professionalism is one of the main factors that can help, but not in the sense that the athletes, they must be paid more. Not in this sense, but in the sense that the athletes, they have more time to dedicate to rowing. If I can make the example of my country where I stay mostly is in Greece. In my years, I've been here in Greece and quite a lot now. I don't have rowers, they row more than 6-8 years with the national team. And mostly we don't take athletes, they are high level from the beginning. I mean, build the rowers from we say lower level, because in the clubs, they take quite low level. Then from the junior category or the first year under 23, in 4 or 5 years, we build athletes to go to the Olympic. But for sure, they cannot make world record, except is not one non-Olympic boat. So the professionalism, where you have a system that organizes the athletes, for sure will help a lot to make the world record. And then about the training methods, I say to you, and for sure, the technique support a lot, the development of the technique, but related to, as a skill of the rowers. I have not, how to say, for my age maybe, I am not so much related to new, totally different rowing technique. I don't know how much, in which area we can change technique. Also because I believe a lot that who has a big influence on technique are the oars, are the blades. Because I have seen huge changes from the year that has been introduced, the big blade. For sure, many countries and many coaches, they change mind about rowing technique because of the blade. And of course, the equipment is one of the points that is important about the world record. Now, going on the next slide, Ludovica, please. I was very positively surprised for the consideration of Volkenholt. I think he has done really another point of view, and this is really something that can give more, because the sequence of numbers about the world record trend, as you have seen it, it looks like or it's going up or it's going down. And the curve of the trends has some, how to say, delay on the real situation. So as you said, there is not true that we have we are reducing the records, but we are continue to progress. In reality, this progression depends from the past. What's happened in the past, you don't see. This is really a revelation, what we have seen with this graph. And you can see that this mostly depends from what happened in the 93, 2003. That was the massive increasing of record. And I think it's mostly related to the use of big blade oars. So at the beginning of the 90s, we have the introducing, there was to say, use more the big blade oars. And from that moment, we see one explosion of records, because these blades, for sure, they give one positive effect. And this was gradually, not just at the beginning, but in these years, mostly more countries they were using, and more athletes, better to say, use these blades. The world record was coming, and so it was really a spread of world record, and this spread was mostly for the decade. And slowly, it is an assessment. And what is, for the point of view of Volker and his presentation, was reduction. In reality, I think is an assessment of the record. So really, at the end, we are, sorry, just to make an explanation of the point of this point. At the beginning, we have the changes of material. We have the difference of boats, of oars, or what it is that created the difference. When we have this difference, the more people they use it, more record we will have. And then there is one assessment stage, but only the real new talents, they can continue to make the records. And for sure will not be in very big boats, but it will be mostly in the small boats. And then, so this, we can say that the improvement has been done by the material. So we have new oars, new carbon fibers was coming, the different sides of blades. So we are still going in something that should come for the next period. And in the other 2 days, okay, I said already that was a stabilization. Please, Ludovica, can you change? On the point that I want to focus about the world record, I want to say also that to have the world records, we should have some physiological skills. And we know that the force curve has mostly the peak between the age of 25 to 29 years. The maximum oxygen uptake is the maximum peak at 27, 29 years of age. And we can say it's a longer effect on the technical efficiency that is never on the lower age, but is mostly from 28 until 34, 35. We see also with the Tufte that is over 40 years that he continued to maintain and to have one effect of technical efficiency. The power curve that can give an influence, please, in the next, yes, next slide. You can see that the highest curve in the gray color, I think it should be like this from your screen. You see that the curve has exactly more or less the same relationship of the oxygen uptake curve that I would like to show you, but at this moment I don't have with me in Greece the books that I can easily make consultation when I'm at home. So the curve of oxygen uptake increased until 28, 29 years, and slowly, like you can see, the curve of force on the distance of 500 meters made on the ergometer, and it's not so much like the performance of the green one that is immediately down, because the 2000 meters has other to say elements inside for rowing on the ergometer. So it's more related to the power also there, but is also related to the time that athletes they can spend on longer distance. So I use as a reference the first curve of power that is mostly hormonal curve. You have a lot of testosterone to produce power, to produce energy, and your muscles are really tonic at the beginning of growing. And then when this power is reducing, you see also the speed or velocity, better to say, is reducing. And this is what we should say, in which age we can have the world record. And the age, I can tell you, is around between 25, 29 years, 20, 30 years. It should be in this range. Can you go on the next slide, please, Ludovica? If you see the difference between the record and the maintaining the results, from this graphic, you see that the power is reducing, but the athletes can continue to maintain the good results, because the good results, they don't depend only from the oxygen uptake, but depends also from the rowing efficiency. So many athletes, they can continue to maintain for more years these high level results, and we have many examples in rowing of rowers. They have this kind of curve because of their technique and their experience in rowing, in the competitions, and also how they know how to prepare themselves during the year. So the results themselves is not a point that you can win at the age of 40. The point is you can make world record at this age. I say not. It's not possible to make a world record at that time. The world record has to be done before. I made one very easily. Please, next slide, Ludovica. I made a very, how to say, easy research. I said that the two world records they have done in single, because single for sure, two talents, they have good efficiency in the rowing technique, and they have also good physiological qualities and performance, and they are really easy to find it. And you see that the world record of Rumianka, Nekova from Bulgaria, and Robre Madsen, both of them, they made the world record at the age of 29, in the case of Rumiana, and in the same, for Robert, at the age of 28. So this means that they are in the range of what is physiological. So from physiological point of view, we can expect the athletes to make the record in this age. But how many athletes, when they start rowing, they can do these results at that moment? So you should support them. And as I said before, I have rowers that they don't give me more than 6 years of their sport life to make the results. So I am sure that on open category, I will not have athletes that they can do this good, how to say, performance, because they don't row so many years. But one system that maintain the rowers in activity and they keep them in rowing over the age of 30, and we know they exist. New Zealand is one of these countries. Italy is one of these countries. Germany, Great Britain, you see they have a huge number of athletes. And other countries, they cannot do this. They are in trouble. In US, for example, from women point of view, they are able to maintain this stability and to have athletes for long period, like also in England, I said before. But for men, they cannot do it. So the men, they have very big troubles to maintain the performance and to be able to make records. So we can, from my point of view, we cannot expect that they will do record for the next years coming from US, except the singles. So the singles, yes, they cannot, they have no problem. We can expect a single sculler from US doing this, or Canada too. But for long boats, I have a big doubt on this issue. And then I have the next slide, and this last slide, Ludovica, please. Okay, about the prognostic time. Totally agree with you that we can use it, but to use it for what? Because if we want to use a prognostic time for selections, I don't think is very good. I don't think it's fair also. Because in my case, I want to say, okay, we take a prognostic time just thinking on the perception, how is the progression. And you have seen how far they are from the world records. Also your calculation, Valerie, your calculation related to world record, sometimes is faster, sometimes is slower. So in reality, there is no, how to call it, no correct reference on what is the reference from where we should start to calculate well. And if we calculate well, is correct, because it depends on the countries where they put the best people. So it can have huge speed. For example, I remember in 2012 in London, the British, they have the best people, not in the 8, and they can do very good 8, but they put best people in Cox's 4 because Jürgen Gobler, he likes the Cox's 4 and want to maintain his, how to say, like a serial winning coach. He want to win in Cox's 4 instead of to put the best people in the 8. So it depends on the policy to make the record. But based on prognostic time, I think we should be more fair. And for me, the more fair possible is to consider the world records. And the world records is something that is the true has not huge value, as you said very well, but for sure can give to us some reference point that in percentage to this world record, we can be fair when we select our crews. Because the crews, they should say, I am in one specific boat type where this is the top and I must be close to this top that is real. And I have seen in this prognostic time of some countries, there is huge difference between world record and the prognostic time. I was surprised to see the prognostic time of lightweight women double that was much tougher for men. So this means that if you use this time, prognostic time, you will never select a good crew in that boat. And I don't think it's fair, not because exists the world record, because somebody with one mathematical criteria decide to put this time much faster than lightweight men double. That was more or less similar to the world record. So I think it should be something objective, real, not theoretical, because theoretical, sometimes the process is very clear, but the premise of the theoretical process is wrong. And in the case of world prognostic time, I think there are a lot of premises that are wrong, and then you can have a wrong time. And unfair, because I repeat, is mostly for selections that is not correct to have this prognostic time. And the last point I want to say to you that about the world record. Rowing is one sport that is linear. So to have one direction of wind always can create difficulties. And especially when we have a side wind in head or tail, doesn't matter. When we have side wind, this can give a different help, and we cannot avoid this. And we should have very accurate instruments to realize the huge control on the course. We should create kind of a net, controlling the water, controlling the air. And like Tornissen suggested, we should have one indoor rowing race where we can decide to make the world record there. So we should have one closed area, no influence of the wind, close from all sides, and they say, okay, we go in this place, and we will decide to see what is the world record in the conditions of control conditions, and that is fair for everybody. The only point that I can think could be interesting about prognostic time, and this is my suggestion because you asked a suggestion on this, it could be in this way. Knowing all World Rowing Championship that has done until now with zero wind conditions, we can say more or less was zero wind condition or low influence of wind that we have like Linz, with the times we have there, we can stabilize the difference of watts, or we say energy, that we have of all other boats related to the 8. So we should create one ranking of energy that produce in the 8, and then in the quadruple, and then in Cox's 4, double, pair, and single. With this ranking, we can understand the difference of energy that is necessary to produce when you are in the 8 and then in the way down. So we understand how much is difference between all boat categories. And from this, eventually, we can make a prognostic time based on the world record of the 8, but always taking an eye on the, we'll say, in the world record really realized. That's all my possibility of, how to say, with my low level of culture in mathematics. So I finish, and I hope I give some positive proposal to your idea and the Falkenot idea. Thank you.
Rosie, what time do we finish? In 15 minutes?
We will, we don't have, yes, we've said 15 minutes, but if we overrun a little bit, it'll be fine. Except I know it's very late for you.
Next time I'm speaking with Valerie and Gianni, can I go first?
Yeah.
Look, two fascinating points of view, and it's always a privilege to both present and talk at any time with Valerie and Gianni. I guess just to, if I can, well, I don't need my slides up yet. You know, Valerie, you've raised some interesting points, as you always do, and it's again, there's 4 areas. You spoke about the speed trends, the prognostic times, stroke rate, and effective work per stroke. Gianni, you made some really good points about how countries target boats, the efficiency in the technique and how that counts, as well as prognostic times and whether you're using them for training or selection. And you know, I tried to come at this from a slightly different angle, I guess. So if you could move to the next slide, please. One of the statistics I like to do is just have a look at the big dance, the game that we're all aiming for. Where at the Olympics there's very few world best times. There's usually Olympic records go, but also just looking at trends in our sport to add a different perspective. So, you know, in there we go back to Montreal. It's just obviously there's 14 boat classes, and that's where it started, with 14 boat classes in Montreal. And you can just see the number of countries winning medals on the total side, the gold, silver, and bronze. And when we talk about world's best time or Olympic gold medalists, and this reiterates Gianni's point, like there are only 3 countries that won more than 1 gold medal in Rio. It was New Zealand and Germany with 2, and GB with 3. So actually, we're talking about the cream de la cream, and countries do target the different boats, and it's getting a more and more competitive field with us. We can see that over the last 4 games, we've had 23 countries winning medals, 21 countries, it was 18, and then 21. So it's getting more and more competitive for us. We could just go to the next slide, and looking at that, and Valery's also done a lot of work on race profiles, amongst others as well. And actually, the race profiles haven't changed that much over the years. If you have your average race pace, and it's a 101.5 to 99.5 to 98.5 to 100 point something, it's a very even race. And if you look back at the world's best times, they're pretty even as well. And so you've got to ask yourself the question, why, and what are the determinants? And of course, if you turn yourself around, an even pace is important physiologically, but if you race backwards, to get an advantage, you've got to come out. You get in oxygen debt, but actually then you only have to go as fast as the second place crew to win the race. So a lot of our races aren't necessarily going for world best time. So you've got the time versus your race, and then how competitive and the depth of competition that you have in some of those events. I wanted to pick up on some of Valery's point about the boat speed or the speed that we go, because that's an outcome, and as coaches we need to look and see, where is that next performance going to come? How are we going to achieve this with this world best time? And that's what I decided to come in and just explore a little bit. So I'll take you through a little bit of a journey there. And I think the effective work per stroke is key, because that's a fundamental. We're a lever sport. That's why we have such tall people. Stroke length is important. Stroke rate's important. And if you can hold that, then you'll get your speed. So if you pare down to your first principles on what we do in the sport, they're the things that we can actually change. And as Gianni rightly put, Fees has said, it's about the horses, not about the chariots. The equipment is going to be affordable, and it's going to be available to all. So when we want to break world records, where do we look? We need to look to the people. So do we get better people? Do we target events? How do we do that? And if we're looking for the fast crew, of course we want, or most crews look, most nations are more in looking for winning races, and a side product is a world's best time, rather than just ultimately flat. But obviously, if you're the fastest boat, you'll win the race. And I guess when you look at prognostic times, Rosie mentioned about that London the London regatta for the cruise I was involved with. We had a 2,000 metre race 2 weeks before the Olympics, and 3 of those crews broke the world's best time. 3 of those crews won gold medals, but we still weren't using those as we were still using prognostic times ahead of the world's best time for our training methodology and also for our assessment. Now, Gianni, in that sense, we're not using them whether you're in or out of a boat, but they were certainly very good to use as a training methodology. And actually, that's using your coach's judgment. And coaching's art as much as it is science. And with all the anomalies that you both described about the weather and about the conditions, and you'll have stream and you won't have stream, we have to be practical in our sport and use that. But I think if you've got your own system in place and you can be consistent with your system, then as a coach you can really use that. And then where can we use technology? Because technology is improving and improving. It must be, it's as you know, the mobile phones changed the world and rules our life now. Well, 10 years ago it didn't, and 15 years ago it didn't. And in our sport, we can start to more use technology. Valery, you've mentioned about data and big data, and we should be able to use that and be able to inform our coaching decisions and looking for where the next breakthroughs are. And a lot of that, I think, is going to be in live feedback to the rower, because we've got the boat speed, which is the outcome. We need to get more out of those individual rowers, both to row efficiently and to row effectively. Because at the moment, the three of us could be in a boat and the coach is taking the stopwatch, and Gianni's pulling 100% of himself. I'm only pulling 55, and Valery's pulling 80. Well, it's not so efficient there. And okay, we've got some heart rate bands we can use, but how much force is each rower getting? How effective is it? And this comes back to being able to have a feedback system that can give the rower instant feedback. And in rowing, we're just starting to get some of this technology into the boats with Valery and other manufacturers. And I just see that as real potential in our sport to get a competitive advantage, of course, but also take the training to a different level, take the racing to a different level. So I kind of wanted to add those comments, because I know the presentation there and the difficulty in trying to draw those trends, Valery, and you put it really well, and Gianni, your practical side of the coaching and what we do day to day, and the importance of the technique and the importance of prioritizing the crew. But where is the next breakthrough coming in our sport? Where can, instead of just breaking it like the Kiwi men's pair, like you said, how can you blow an event? How can you blow an event apart? Well, I feel it's going to be with the people. That should be nearly 15 minutes, Rosie, or at least allow you 5 minutes for questions.
So thank you very much, all three of you. I just would, I think you're the experts on this. We have got a few questions, but I'd be very keen for now. Valery's listened to both of you, perhaps him to come back or Gianni to come back and just hear what else you have to say now you've heard each other speak, rather than just seeing the presentations. So Valery, I don't know if you've got any comments for Paul or Gianni.
Yeah, I just would like to make a very short comment. Thanks to everyone for the feedback and opinions. Basically, I would agree with most of your points. I just want to make it clear, the main, like my main point, my reason, what I try to do. I try to be objective and open-minded, When we're talking about the trends, it could be rowing speed or board speed or whatever, or prognostic times. In all my newsletters every month I publish them. I always publish methods, and that's not my personal opinion. This is some objective information. I always show how I obtained it and how I analyze it. I can make mistake, which I do sometimes, and people can correct me. They can see, they can follow, they can repeat, the same analysis, the same study, the same measurements, and they may produce different results. Okay, that's how this science works. That's how this world works. So I wouldn't argue about, what prognostic times should we use, world-based times. I just want to say that sometimes it could be really important, just to answer Gianni, points. Like I have my personal experience. Like in 1978, I was in the best double in Soviet Union, and the World Championship was in Karapiro in New Zealand, and the head of the national team decided only half of the team was going, and I missed basically half a second. They took men's pair and not men's double where I was. So it could be, quite significant consequence of, and if maybe I'm not sure what prognostic times they use, but they have to compare different balls, different events. That's how it works in real life. And small countries, I think, quite often practice that sort of selection, because the funding is limited, and when world regatta somewhere in remote, expensive travel is expensive, and they have to choose which boat is going. It has more chances, to be successful. Yeah, that's a point. But anyway, I would repeat. I wouldn't go in details, and I only would like, to be more objective. And Nikola Gospodarsky from Bulgaria just sent me email message saying, offering, help with obtaining results from World Regattas. Yeah, thanks, Nikola. I would really appreciate it. But my point is to make it available for everyone. Not only myself, but everyone should be able to access them easily, because very often I receive like emails from students, from PhD students, from rovers coaches asking if I can send them, some data. I always try to help them, but I not always have that data. So I want just to make our sport more open, more clear, more objective, and that's my point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions that's come in is around the iPhone and whether or not, or the smartphone, and whether or not that came in about 2007, whether that's made any difference. I think, Paul, you mentioned that we're now driven by our smartphones. I don't know whether you feel that that's had any influence at all in terms of how we train or how we monitor it or anything else.
I'd flip that question around. I think that technology, whether it's the Nelson Kellerman stroke coaches or different feedback that the rowers get, that certainly has helped the training. Of course, there's plenty of apps on the smartphone that you can get boat acceleration with, boat velocity with, GPS units. So, again, I think is that has to be helping rowers get better. Whether it was just the iPhone or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably I shouldn't refer to a brand, should I? The smartphone. Okay, and I just had a couple of observations, which in terms of the weather, we often find it's very different on different parts of the course. And you mentioned, Valery, that we should have at least one weather station. I know the Australians have done quite a lot of work looking at how to instrument their course all the way down, so they have better analysis of the weather at all parts of their course rather than just in one place. And trying to get weather on the course is very difficult because often it can be very different off the course. It's more of an observation really than anything, that trying to get one point which then has validity for the whole event is quite difficult, I think.
Can I answer your comment, Rosie?
Please.
Of course, I understand the difficulty, and it could be, if you want to monitor it all the way during the course, it could be expensive. By the way, I remember Dutch scientists presented something a few years ago. They had in Amsterdam, Bosbaan, they tried that system. But yeah. And the more weather stations we'll have, the better. Of course, if we can put them every 250 on both sides of the course, that would be the best. But even one weather station, if we have that records and put them in a database, after a few years we can draw some conclusions. You know, it would be very informative. Even just to have that information, what generally was the weather? Was it generally what water temperature, air temperature, it was headwind or tailwind? Of course, it could be not so accurate during the course, but in large numbers, it may help. That's my point.
Okay, thank you, Gianni. We are just slightly overrunning in time, so I just wondered if you wanted to come back on anything or to summarize some of the things that have been said before we close.
Okay. Okay. I want to just have some little laugh about the phone. We don't say iPhone, all phone, smartphone, generally talking. I am not agree that they are very good. They are helping the sport. For me, they are not helping the sport, because it's not so sure that all information they are giving about the physiological performance of rowers and generally all people, they are helping, but it's just a control. And the control doesn't mean that you go better. It's just a view. And but for sure, I have some athletes. One especially was really painful for me. One very talented athlete with addicted to his telephone, and he cannot stay out from telephone for jokes, Facebook, Instagram, and all these things. So for sure, the athletes with the smartphone are sleeping less and bad. And this has a very big influence on their performance. So I don't see that is positive. Sometimes I would like to do it, but it's not possible because it's against the freedom of people. We should close all internet connections because it's the moment to rest. So I don't see very positive. Secondly, about what Paul said before, I don't know if all technology is very supportive to the sport, because I remember one very nice sentence from Chris Kozinowski during the one interview. He said, you know, I was I think it was Olympic Games in London. He went to the Australian rowers that they didn't perform very well. And they said, boys, what's happened? And the rowers, they said to him, we don't know, we will see our biomechanical analysis and we will let you know. But for me, this is not rowing. Rowing is the rowers, they must improve their skills to fill the boat. Again, it's not the rowers, how to fill the boat. So maybe all this technology create more distance between the filling of rowers, that for me is the base of our sport, and the technology. We should be, and also from coach point of view, because I see too many coaches focus on the diagram on their computer and they don't see the face of their rowers. And for me, it's more important to see the face of my rowers, that the numbers are coming, the cold numbers on my computer. So we should always keep the good balance. Maybe because I'm a coach of the other century, I think in this way. The new coaches, they want to have more information. But for me, the information is only information, is not a decision. For me, the expression, the motivation, the anger of rowers or the happiness of rowers, for me, are more important than all data they can say my tools in the boat. That's all. Okay,
well, thank you very much, Gianni, for ending that. I did say you were an artist, and I think you've just proven it. I also, it really resonates with the first speaker that we had, Stephen Seller, because he talked about, you know, in the end, it has to be about the feel of the athlete, whether they're running a 400 meters or they're in a rowing boat, and possibly in a rowing boat even more so, in terms of their personal coordination, but also their coordination with others. So yeah, you presented a very nice circle for us there as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed this debate. I hope it's the start of something and not the end of something. And the three of you have done a fantastic job of laying it out and then also coming from different perspectives back to it again. So I'd like to thank you very much. And if people have got follow-up questions, please send them in. We'll try and see if how we might answer them in the future. Just to remind you that there are 2 more days of the coach conference. So we have tomorrow, we have live question time to the speakers that have already gone that weren't live sessions. And you can see you should have had a timetable for what time those start and which speakers are on when. Sunday, we have 2 further videos which will be uploaded, which will conclude our conference. And I really want to thank all of our speakers who've been fantastic, and also particularly thank the 3 of you for today's live session. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all that are here. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.